Okay, so I'll take you through my journey, and then we'll get a panel session set up, and then we can stop talking, and you can start asking some questions. So little glimpse into some of my achievements. Particularly proud of these. Pick them from a number. I often look at this slide since I pulled it together, and I thought this is what my life should have been like. So what I'm about to tell you is all the reasons why you shouldn't do what I do, so you get to do the things you actually set out to achieve. But also, this gives you a little bit of an insight into some of my passions and some of the things that I enjoy, and I can assure you none of these I've actually done. Not at that level anyway. So let me just talk to you about what I have done. So I too have been officially working for 26 years. I've done various jobs while I was at university and even at school. In fact, I was working in a pub at 16. I'm sure that's not right, but it was a wonderful start to my working career. I'm a West Country boy, so I was born in Bath. Interestingly, a link there as well. Beautiful city. It's amazing. You know, you often are blind to the things that are around you when you spend so much time in them. And it wasn't until I left Bath that I realised what a great city it was. And so if there's one piece of advice I just give you is take a look around you and just appreciate it, because at some point it will disappear, and you'll suddenly realise that you've lost something wonderful. And all of us have those things around us. I had a fantastic upbringing, actually. I had great role models in my parents. I had a brother who I regularly beat up, and he appreciated that and learnt a lot. I was a sports-mad individual. I spent all my time mainly playing rugby and getting injured, but also enjoyed playing football, anything really that was sport-related. And as a result, managed to keep myself both healthy and limping. Now, I think there's a theme here in terms of don't really know what you want to do. And I think that there's a reality, really, that says don't worry about it. And I'll come on to tell you why in just a moment. You know, your career is a long thing, hopefully. And for many of us, it will just get longer and longer. And I have a 10 and a 12-year-old, and I know that they're likely to be working a lot longer than potentially I would have been working, and certainly that my father was working. So it's the long game. Don't worry if you can't see what is going to happen at the end of it, or even halfway through it. Just enjoy the moments that materialise in front of you, because most of them will materialise without you planning them, without you even thinking that they're on your list of to-dos. They just appear, and you need to take advantage of those. But I at school struggled. I struggled a lot, actually. I spent my entire primary school copying off the kid next to me. He was bloody good, actually, but he was terrible at hiding his answers, and I was very good at taking them. Unfortunately, I was caught out on a number of occasions. I never forget the maths teacher in my primary school. You know that moment at the end of it was a mental arithmetic test. I still don't know what that means. And they asked us to do the questions, 10 questions, and then who got 10 out of 10? Whoa, ooh. Shouldn't have admitted that. That question comes. Talk me through how you got that answer, Stuart. That was the most fearful I have ever been in my life, because I didn't have a clue. Because the kid next to me had written it down, and if he'd written it down, it must have been right. And I began to waffle and fumble, and the teacher just buried me. And I still carry that scar around with me today. In fact, I'm choking thinking about it. But I spent my entire primary school doing that, and a lot of self-doubt built up in that time. By the time I got to secondary school, in fact, I went to the same school as my father went to, and actually the same school that his father went to. So there's a long legacy of failure throughout that school. They did very well, actually. But I started off in what was called the remedial group, and actually the classroom was called the Rainbow Room. It's all very demeaning. And all my mates were in because I don't know how I ended up being friends with all these very bright individuals, but we're all in the sort of A and B classes. And that was my first experience of, and similar to as you described, David, of thinking, you know what, I've kind of had enough of this, really. And I was constantly, throughout my early days, being told why I couldn't do stuff rather than why I could do stuff. And why is such a powerful question? And I suddenly realised that actually I'd had enough of being told why I couldn't, and I was just going to try and push the boundaries a bit and have a go. I didn't really do that through academia. I just did it just through trying stuff, and very often failing. But it wasn't until I got to right to the end of school when, in my days, we had what were called CSEs. Blank looks, most of you. I was basically told by my teachers, Stuart, it's pointless you going on to do O-levels. No, blank looks again. They were the last before GCSEs. But they said, don't bother with O-levels. CSEs were the ones below. You need to be focusing on those. Don't stretch yourself too much. And it was at that point I said, no, I want to do O-levels. And I started working hard. And I did that just by putting hours and hours in at home. And purely in the motivation was to prove them wrong. That's all the motivation was. And that's been something that I've done throughout my entire working life. The biggest button that anyone can press is somebody who says, no, you can't do that. And I said, oh, yes, I can. So I went from CSEs to O-levels, and I got my O-levels. Not bad grades. They weren't off the clock, but they weren't bad grades. And they said, no, just stop there. You don't want to be doing A-levels. Let's just just quit while you're ahead. Let's just start thinking about doing something technical. Because in those days, technical's bad. Believe me, in the future, it's going to be fantastic. And if not today. So I said, no, I'm going to do A-levels. So I did my A-levels. I did biology, I did art, I did English literature. I was good at one of them. I was pretty poor at the other two, but again, worked hard and didn't get bad grades. Not, again, stellar grades. And they said, Stuart, don't be thinking about university, mate, because that's going to lead you down a dark path. You want to be going off to some college and doing another piece of technical stuff. And I said, no, I'm going to go to university. And so the story goes on. And I ended up going to university and trained to be a teacher. And the reason I trained to be a teacher for no other reason than so I could go up to kids and go, you can do that. You can achieve that. It can be done. And stopping teachers or friends or family saying you can't do it. But my motivation was because I had a single teacher at school who said to me, Stuart, you make a great teacher because you're so positive. And all you want to do is convince people that you can do it. And that could be motivatory. And that was enough for me. And my passion throughout my career is simply been about unlocking potential. That's what my passion is. And my advice to you is throughout your entire career, if you can do two things, these are the two things I would advise you do. One, know what your strengths are. Don't worry about your weaknesses. They're irrelevant. Believe me, they're irrelevant. Know what your strengths are. They're the things that will get you places. Two, know what your passions are. If you can find a role where you're using your strengths and you've got real passion for what you're doing, you've got there. And good money as well is quite useful as well. Although, to be fair, handbags and shoes have never been my thing. Those two things, go in search of them. And sometimes you have to go down paths that never really materialised in your thoughts, but might just open doors to things you never thought you might enjoy that you actually discover. So know what your strengths are and know what your passions are. And I've spent my entire career looking for those things and trying things. And I went to university and I trained to be a teacher. Guess what? Didn't do teaching. So I did 4 years of learning to be a teacher. Secondary school, I did science and PE. Loved PE, hated science. It was mainly because of all the cockroaches and everything else that were escaped, because I did taught A-level biology. Do you know what? I love teaching. What I didn't enjoy was the atmosphere in the staff room, actually. And guess what? Somebody said to me at university when they came to choosing your career, you need to just stick to your teaching, but don't be thinking about a blue chip company or a big name. Of course, buttons were pressed again. I said, right, I'm going to every single meeting. I remember sitting down with Anderson Consulting, one of the big consultancy houses back then, sort of Deloitte-esque type business. I was never going to be a consultant, but the fact that I was sat there was proving something to the doubters. And I sat there and I did the presentation, filled out the forms, got rejected. Eventually, I was offered two roles, actually. One was with Procter & Gamble, in sales, and one was with a company called Allied Breweries at the time, kind of become Allied Domecq, and both were in front of me. And I went for the Allied Breweries one because I love I went for the Allied Breweries one because it was a general management role. It was broad. It was effectively an opportunity to, as a graduate trainee, to own a part of their business. And at 22 years old, I joined, and I was running 22 nut houses in the East End of London, pubs. Sort of pubs that they replace the pool cues every morning with new ones. And certainly the sort of places you didn't go into in a shirt and tie after 5 o'clock. But at 22 years old, I had those businesses, and my God, you grew up fast. They were the days when you used to take the money in a bag to the bank. And I had a manager murdered taking the money to the bank. And it was those sorts of experiences, as horrific as they were, that really taught you at a very young age about responsibility, safety, and what actually matters. But I went through my early days in Allied Breweries. I actually hated it. The culture was pretty harem-farem, very aggressive. I then moved on to a company called Scottish & Newcastle, still like beer and wine. I ran at 27 the southeast of England, and particularly the city and West End, big pubs and restaurants, many of which you will know if you're in and around the London area. I mean, fantastic if you're a single guy, living in London, living rent-free above a pub in East Finchley with 5 other guys, getting out of bed at 11 o'clock in the morning and getting home at 3 in the morning and putting in receipts for competitive visits at Stringfellows. That was a pretty good job. But then I got married, and I settled down, and I applied for a job in the Times for a district manager. I wanted to get into retail. I wanted to get onto the high street, and the job didn't say what company it was, but I went for an interview, and I joined Woolworths. Now, Woolworths I spent 10 years at. Half of that in operations, so I ran shops. I had a couple of regions, one in the northwest of London and latterly in the West Country. But of course, halfway through that, Woolworths used to be a part of a company called Kingfisher. I don't know if you know, but Kingfisher used to be B&Q, Comet, Woolworths, Superdrug. And Woolworths demerged from that business. And I had a fantastic opportunity to work with McKinsey on the demerger of Woolworths from that organisation. I had no idea about consultancy. I told you that previously when I sat in the Anderson Consulting interview. And I'd run shops. I had 23 shops I'd run. But I had a fantastic opportunity to learn. I was quite fearful of working with them, but I had a real opportunity to learn. And so I did it, and I was completely out of my depth, but my God, it accelerated my learning to the extent that when I finished that assignment, I really had a sense of confidence that I'd never had previously. And that's a real learning for me, is you have to put yourself through sometimes some really uncomfortable situations to recognize you're actually developing. And one of the biggest learnings I've had throughout my career is, if you ain't feeling uncomfortable, you're not developing. So if you're sat there thinking, I'm feeling pretty good at the moment, I'm quite comfortable, you're moving nowhere. When you get those moments where you've got the butterflies and you're nervous and you're fearful, when you get those moments, embrace them, because you are developing. And it's those experiences that stretch you and move you forward. So that's a learning opportunity. So really embrace them. The next time you get an opportunity you're fearful of, step forward. Use the techniques and really welcome the fact you're getting an opportunity to develop yourself. And I used a lot of those, and I learned very quickly that I wanted to find more of those opportunities. And the HR director at the time in that business said to me, "Stu, you'd make a great HR director." And I said, yeah, I could do that. And I took a complete leap of faith. I didn't know what HR stood for, to be honest. We spent most of my time in the pub business is trying to run away from HR because we were doing things we shouldn't be doing. And quite honestly, I just knew that I liked people, and I was a good area manager in retail, not because I was commercially astute. In fact, I was the complete opposite. I just knew how to build teams and develop people, and that's what I got a real passion for. Remember, passion, strengths. So I thought, we'll have a go at HR, and I was given an opportunity to have very quickly an opportunity to be, in my HR career, to be an HR director in Woolworths for the retail side of the business. Unfortunately, things didn't end well. I have to put a caveat on this. It wasn't because of anything I'd done. Although there was a running joke that the last good year Woolworths ever had was the year I joined. And that was 10 years before it eventually collapsed. It was a long, long, slow decline. But do you know what? Here's the other lesson. Through the toughest of times and those adversities that you look back on that felt horrific at the time, come the richest of learnings. So what did I learn from the collapse of that business? And by the way, there was me and 12 people left at the end of the Woolworths business. What I learned was leadership is not something that sits on an organisation chart or on a job title. Anybody at whatever level, experience, background, has an opportunity to be a leader. So this is what happened when Woolworths went under. The following day, anybody at the senior level that had leadership accountability on the organisation chart disappeared. You wouldn't see their asses for dust. Couldn't get hold of them on the phone, didn't come to the office, just went underground. What emerged over the following weeks and months was a whole set of new leaders that on the old organisation chart had absolutely no right whatsoever to be doing leadership roles. But they stepped up, and two, people stepped towards them. And you'd have been amazed at the type of people that suddenly people were following and asking for advice. And they had real passion and drive. And it just proved to me that leadership is never about job titles and never about organizational status or even about power. It's just about what you do and the impact you have on people around you. And it can change at any time. The other thing I learned is that good communication and engagement is not a colleague survey or the company magazine that goes out every other month. In fact, it's not even the well put together email that the chief exec will send out to the colleagues. What I learned was what raw communication and engagement was. So when all this chaos was going on and when the organization completely collapsed around me, not only did these leaders emerge, but people started to talk to each other, but in very unstructured ways and about things that really mattered. So people were going into stores, for example, where a lot of the colleagues were very upset, clearly, quite scared and fearful, and having proper conversations with them, engaging with them, encouraging them, fighting for their rights, arranging for bonuses to be paid for selling the fixtures off the wall, trying to find ways of creating motivation amongst what was an entirely demotivated workforce. Good communication and engagement is simply the raw act of speaking to people and listening to people. That's what engagement and communication really meant. So it was horrific. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But again, you step forward in your career, you look back and you think, those are the things that shape you. Those are the things that stay with you. I then cycled to the job centre for 8 weeks. I got fit. And I looked for another job. I did some consultancy work for George at Asda and also for a company called Topps Tiles. And Topps Tiles, on the back of that consultancy work, offered me a job as HR director. Sounds grand. It was me. They didn't have an HR team. And I spent my first day actually answering phones. A couple of people had gone AWOL. I Googled the answer. Because to think of when you're an HR director, you actually haven't got a clue what's going on at the coalface. So thank God Google was available and I saw all the answers. I had 3 wonderful years at that business. And I think what that taught me is that it's not all about scale and blue chip. Yeah? Sometimes it's about looking for opportunities to get some alternative perspective. And in Topps Tiles, and Topps Tiles, by the way, is an amazing business. And when I went into it, I had all sorts of preconceptions about, dusty floors and, oiks, humping great lumps of granite around the place with not a lot of intelligence. How wrong could I be? Fantastic business, real passion for customer service, and very profitable, by the way. You'd amaze what profit you can get on a lump of clay with some glazing on top. Yeah, 20p to make, £3.67 to buy. Think about that when you're negotiating with a salesperson. This was an amazing business. 3 years working for a smaller business where every penny counted, because this was at the time of the recession, taught me a lot about the value of money. And if you just work in big businesses, you just get used to having budgets and people and resource. And I walked into a business that had no resource and no budget, and a FD was as tight as a gnat's, and you know what I'm getting to. It was a tough environment, but you learn stuff. And it was hard, but you're learning stuff and you just chalk it up as experience. I had a fantastic 3 years there because the great thing about a small business is that you can make a difference. And that's probably the only time in my career when I looked at a share price and thought, yeah, I did that. I had a part to play in that. And that's quite something when you can look back and think the changes you made actually impacted on the value of that business. But 3 years was the maximum I gave myself there. And I had a call from an old friend of mine. This is my final lesson. Who said, Stuart, we got this role come up at Sainsbury's. And she knew that Sainsbury's was a business that I had been admiring for many years, for no other reason than this business actually cared about the why. And by the way, Simon Sinek, awesome. If you get a chance to watch all his videos, he is awesome. Very expensive, by the way, 100 grand plus first class travel if you want him stood here talking to you. I know, because I asked him. Not a budget that I had. Even my budget wasn't that big. I just saw Sainsbury's it wasn't the job I wanted. So similar thing, right? You talked about stepping back in salary. Sometimes you just have to make a decision based on the fact that you're heading towards that passion. You're heading towards something you're going to really enjoy. And the role wasn't what I wanted, but I stepped into it and then I sought out opportunities. I've had 3-4 wonderful years at this business. I headed up HR in supermarkets in the first part of my business, and I moved into learning and development, which again, I thought I'd never do. Specialism, I thought I'd never do. But again, you know, you step into it and you think, well, let's have a go. And do you know what? It's the best thing I ever did, because now I've come full circle. I started life training as a teacher, and I now look after the capability and learning requirements for 200,000 colleagues across this group. There's something about the journey that you didn't plan it, and it wasn't something you intended to do, but you landed exactly where you want to be. And now I know what my passion is, and I know what my strengths are, and I feel like for the first time, and believe it or not, I'm 48. I'm 48. But at 48, I didn't find the job I had both my strengths and my passion combined until I reached 46 years old. So keep searching. The rest of the pictures on there are my passions. I coach my son's football team. There are my kids there. I've got half my family in New Zealand. I don't think it's anything to do with me, but they seem to love it. That's my favourite memory. Johnny Wilkinson kicking the goal. Twickenham, my favourite place on the planet. I love playing the guitar, but I'm rubbish at it. And that picture there of the hills, that's my back garden. It's clearly not that big, but that's the view from my back garden. That would just be showing off. So very quickly, 2 things. Kind of got a minute. Anyone know who that is? Not Boris Johnson. That's Lewis. He's the star of a film called Meet the Robinsons, my kid's favourite cartoon. That quote is, for me, one of the most powerful quotes anybody can learn. Around here, however, we don't look backwards for very long. We keep moving forward, opening up new doors, doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. That is on the wall of my kids' bedrooms. They totally ignore it. But it's there. And I want them to be curious. Yeah? I want them to be curious, and I want them to just keep moving forward. Keep finding new ways to learn and to grow. So that's my first little tip. And then my final one is this. And this chap, Alan Chambers, led the first unsupported British expedition to the geographic North Pole from Canada back in 2000. Simply this. I just outlined my career for you. Now, could I have, when I was in my school, have said to you, this is what I want to do. I want to be here, and I want to be in pubs, and then I'm going to go on and do Woolworths. I want the business to fail, because then I can get some learning about leadership. And then, no, that's not the way it works. The reason why this link is made is because he gave us this advice about facing adversity. When he started off on the trip to the North Pole, he got his team together, and they got the map out. This is our starting point, chaps, and this is where we're going to be. And each day they got the map out, and he realised that all this map was doing was scaring the living daylights out of the people around him, because all they saw was how far away the end goal was, the pain they were feeling now, and how little they'd moved from the starting point. So he simply had a tactic, which was to fold up the map into concertina fashions, and all they'd do was unfold the next concertina each day, and then they'd burn the bit they'd just done. So all they could see was the next stage, and he taught them to just focus on the here and now, maximise the experience and the learnings, and don't worry too much about the long game. And that was the way that they managed the trip, to keep people motivated and focused. And I thought, what a wonderful way at looking at your career. Because actually, don't be too focused on, where do you want to be in 10 years? I don't know. I might be somewhere completely, I might have an epiphany after 5 and end up in New Zealand somewhere, shearing sheep. The reality is you don't know. You just have to follow your heart. Follow your strengths, follow your passions, and go where things take you. And do you know what? Most of your career is luck. So build your network. Because most of that phone call I had off that friend of mine at Sainsbury's was because 5 years earlier somebody had said, meet Helen. She works at Sainsbury's. She'd be a good contact for you. And I did. And we got on and we kept in touch. And that contact got me the opportunity here. And I found a role for the first time that I have real passion and which I can use my strengths. Sometimes things just happen. But roll the dice and load them in your favour. Build your network and nurture it. Because they are the things that will get you into your chosen career paths.